Go ahead.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Jen, would you take roll, please?
Commissioner Corbin.
Here.
Commissioner Waldner. Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Thau.
Here.
And Mayor Lindsay.
Here. You have before you the agenda for this evening.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda for this evening.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under appearances and acknowledgments, appear or acknowledge petition for vacation of a street, set a date of hearing for a portion of Industry Avenue South. And I'm going to ask Chad to address this, please.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Included in the agenda packet is a petition submitted by the adjacent landowners, and attached there to that is a map which highlights the area seeking the area to be vacated, and it is a what I'll call a stub street for the start of what would be 14th Street, which extends westward from Industry Avenue, south of the business global Polymer. That street was anticipated in the preliminary plan that was developed by Lake Area Improvement Corporation back in about 2008, as I recall. And then subsequently it was platted, and that right of way was platted, including this particular H plat for this stub street. Now, a new preliminary plat that was prepared by Lake Area Improvement Corporation and the current status of their marketing and development and so on, they want to actually have that be part of a parcel and not part of a street right away. So their request is to vacate that portion of the right of way. So right today is just acknowledgement, and then included in the agenda packet also is the notice of a hearing. I believe is 2 weeks from, about 3 weeks or so?
3 weeks. Needs to be published twice.
Okay. April 29th, 2019.
Yeah, and this is probably something that no one else has really seen either, because it's down at the end of the street and it's just, sidewalks, or not sidewalk, but the curb just curves around, and so it's just a very, very small section. So, okay. Questions or comments?
What's the hearing date? April 29th?
April 29th.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge petition for vacation of street and set a date of hearing for April 29th for a portion of Industry Avenue South.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, acknowledge preliminary building permit application materials submitted to the State Historical Preservation Office on the proposed new construction at 705 North Egan Avenue. Chad, do you want to address that?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Included in your agenda packet is 13 pages of materials that will eventually be used, or similar such materials, for a building permit application. We received those from Opal Properties in anticipation for construction of new structures at, in this case, 705 North Egan Avenue. These, at the request of the developer and after consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office, we sent these over as a preliminary. Apparently that's a step that they do in reviewing preliminary submittals and providing comments back for developers who are looking to make improvements in historic districts in this case. And so I did submit those back, and I just wanted this information to be available. This was in the agenda packet, as you know, and for you and the public to see what's been proposed. Subsequent to the agenda deadline, I will report I did receive those preliminary comments back, and I'm willing to share those with you and anybody else who wants them as well. What I would envision after this, related to this new this new construction permit, is the applicant would try to address SHPO's concerns, and then also we have our own steps and submittals that they have to prepare before we even would accept that application, development of a site plan, and more specifics related to several various items. So,
Yeah, because they still would have to do a replat and that, and survey, and so
Correct.
there's a number of steps yet.
this, and I want to emphasize this is preliminary,
Right.
but it's what we have, and it was submitted to a point where we did submit it to SHPO, so I thought it was appropriate to share
Mhm.
that with others. It was, there's been a significant amount of back and forth sharing of drawings and documents, and we're trying to get the applicant to give us what are you actually doing. And so they were comfortable and that they were to that point with these documents, and so we did share them with SHPO. So that's all this is to let you know that we forwarded this to SHPO, and indeed, again, after the agenda deadline, we received some comments back.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to acknowledge?
I'll make a motion, we acknowledge the preliminary building permit application material submitted to SHPO, new construction, 705 Egan Avenue.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, acknowledge the preliminary building permit application material submitted to, again, the State Historical Preservation Office for new construction at 709 North Egan Avenue. And this basically is the same thing as what we just went through. So are there any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to acknowledge?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Is there anything anyone would like removed from the consent calendar?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Under old business, 5:30 p.m. Plus or minus, public hearing for the demolition of 705 North Egan Avenue, and this is the hearing. So at this point in time, is there anyone that has any questions, comments? Yes?
You want me up here?
Please, Tim. And then, for the benefit of people at home, the microphone is there, so.
Yeah, my name's Tim Tucker. We live in the neighborhood. I don't know that we have any real concern with the demolition, but also obviously we're concerned with what's going to go in its place. So I guess kind of to address that a little bit, and I won't get too far off track, but we've seen the preliminary plan with 6-bedroom. I'm just wondering if we have rules in place to address the density potential that we're looking at. If we have houses with 2 beds in each bedroom, we're talking 12, 24 people, 48 people in the complex. And I know Brookings has addressed some of these things to address the concern of unrelated people living in the same, in fact, dormitory. This is really a dorm pod design, as I understand it, multiple bedrooms, 1 kitchen for really set up for unrelated people. I understand 23 parking spaces, but the concern is, do we have rules in place as a city to address that? What happens if we do that?
And at this point in time, there are questions that we have as a city. And once we have opportunity to review what SHPO has sent back, and that we will have, I believe, a future public hearing on the proposal to build. And we'll go through that similar to what we have done in the steps, for the demolition process. So at this point in time, we don't necessarily have all the answers that you may have, But I would appreciate that you submit those, concerns and that to Chad, our engineer, and it will be something that we as a city will be looking at, when we move into the next phase of their application for a building permit.
Right, and my concern would be, do we have rules in effect in the city before we consider the application? To
We do
address
have
the
some,
density
and
issues?
David
I'm going to
can
refer
get
to, I'm going to defer to Chad.
Yes.
We have density.
We do have density, yes.
In this R60 zone, you can have 2 dwellings on a lot. And so one of these units, it's a duplex, and in each, that's what I would use it just for the sake of conversation. And in each duplex, there are indeed 6 bedrooms. So there's 12 bedrooms in each duplex. And so that would be one of the addresses. One was 705, and then the similar type of unit would be in 709.
But
Are there rules
I
on
think,
how
I
many
think what
people-
he's asking
Six
is we do
unrelated
have
people in the
6
building.
unrelated party members can live in a dwelling. So in this case, in that, each of those being a duplex would be limited to 12. And this is something in that we will be addressing, down the road. So we do have that there. I am just reluctant to get too far in depth right now on what could be there, since right now we're talking about the demolition side of it. So, but we do have some of those already in place in city ordinance. So, but if you have other questions, please
No, that's
submit
all I
them.
have. It's an awkward procedure because we don't know what's going in until you
Totally
demolish.
is.
So there is that
But-
process. I don't know if they can be joined together to address the issue.
Historical preservation's driven us to have each
Okay.
one looked at separately. So we felt it was logical to take demolition over building, and so we took demolition first. The question of whether they can be joined together, I suppose they could be, as long as historical preservation's weighing in on both.
Right. Because they're 2 separate issues, I know that.
They are 2 separate issues.
And that's how we've been approaching it. It's just 2
And-
separate issues.
From a commission standpoint and from a mayor standpoint, David has guided us, and we've done a lot of steps that weren't required, but we all felt that, being open and out in the public, and that was very, very important. So we've put some steps in that, that normally we would not have had to, and thanks to David's guidance and that, this is how we've been proceeding it, and so.
Your point is very well taken, and, early on in this, that was one of my biggest concerns was, if, the demolition part, and they could, come in, tell everybody, I'm just gonna put this little house on it, and then but it's not approved, and then once it's demolished, and then they build something crazy, so, and that's definitely something that I know I've been making sure that people are aware, listen, you don't know what's coming on the back end because they could change their plans. And, but I was kind of happy to see that, and Chad, like he mentioned, has been working on the temporary or preliminary building permit, so at least we can kind of get a look at that. And
It is helpful that we have something submitted.
It is, yes.
As the neighbors, we've received no contact at all. We've
Right.
never heard from.
Except
the
from-
developer.
Except from the
The
mayor.
mayor has maintained contact.
Yes.
But the developer,
Yes.
of what is intended, we've heard nothing.
Still to date, that's the case.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
And I hope that you're feeling a little bit more like it's getting joined, now that we're both dealing with demolition and plans. I mean, I think we're getting closer to having the 2 processes joined. I don't think the developer's under a duty to contact the owners, but this commission has advised the developer on multiple occasions to do
Multiple
so.
occasions, yes.
It would be a courtesy.
Well,
So we don't-
and then that's one of the things, as mayor, that I reached out to make sure that everybody knew and, was brought along in the process, so.
And I appreciate that even when I wasn't here.
Yes.
contacted me.
Yes.
So that's appreciated.
So, so at least we've kind of got it, we've got it starting. We do have some guidelines and some ordinances in place that will have to be followed. But again, we will have, and are planning on having, a hearing also, as that progresses forward as well.
That would be good.
So-
Yeah, there will be future hearings on what
Yes.
ends up on those properties.
Yep.
That's all I have.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, back to, the public hearing under old
I
business.
think we have another question.
Is there
over here.
anyone? Yes. Would you please come to the microphone for the benefit of those people that listen at home?
Sure. And this might be just a question for Chad. Is there any, when you're looking at this, because you're going to run into this more and more as time goes on, is there any benefit to the city to, when you do the rezoning or any of that stuff, to put it into a planned, a PDD, Planned Development District? Because you've got that in your guidelines.
It would be up to somebody to petition, if they wanted to petition, have a planned development district, and then they, I haven't seen a lot of those, and so I can't talk about them very articulately, but we have one in town, but, they could propose that.
And
Yeah, I think the
typically
point
that-
is, I think it'd be considered, but I think our rules dictate that that's something that would become before the commission on a petition basis.
Correct. So like any particular rezone,
Yeah.
same process.
From the developer?
From the developer
Correct.
or the neighborhood.
Well, when
You
you
know.
typically look at that
Yeah.
as the neighborhood itself, 2 lots is kind of small for a planned district, don't you think?
But you can do it for more than that.
Well,
even
you
though
could
there's
absolutely
only 2 that are applying at this time.
Right.
I don't know what our guidelines are, but I think Sioux Falls, in there to do a PDD, you have to have a minimum of 5 acres. I remember reading that recently as I was going through some others, and I think it's Sioux Falls, so,
believe
but
it
I
might
don't
be
know,
similar.
but I don't know that, that we have it spelled out in ours. I'd have to, look at that and see.
I think that's a good idea, something to consider, because then you could spell out what the,
I just think it lets the city have more say in what gets accomplished in that area that they want to see. Because obviously, there's some other properties, including mine, that I don't know what I'm going to do with.
Which is right next door to 709.
Right. So I have no idea what we're going to do with that, but even to the north of that one, there's some pretty properties that probably should be something done with at some point in time. So that's why I just was thinking about it.
Sure.
When Mr. Tucker was talking, that could be a way that you can help control what you want to see in that area. And from the knowledge, a little bit of knowledge I have about PDDs is, it seems like there's a lot more emphasis on the green space and some of that type of stuff than there is on anything else.
both the floodplain being there poses some unique challenges for those lots as well, so.
Because even on these properties here, the floodplain then drops off. So there's a significant amount to the depth of the properties that's in the floodplain.
The front of the property's in the floodplain.
Have you spoke to the neighboring developer about this, potentially doing this?
In regards to a PDD?
Yeah.
No. I never really gave it much thought, but just now.
Yeah.
But that's why I went,
Well, it's worthy consideration.
With
Yes.
the concern of the neighborhood, it's just a way that maybe that's a amicable reason to see if that could be put together so that way you still have some control of what you want to see in that area and how it's going to be redeveloped. Again, in addition to these 2 lots, the whole area.
Right now, the only control we have is our zoning ordinance, basically, which limits dwelling densities and so on like that. So it's not that we have no control.
Right.
Within our zoning ordinances is what the control is right now.
Right.
So, and there's a PDD, I understand that's more of a collaborative process between the developer and, in this case, the city would be the primary other reviewer, probably the planning commission in particular, and so on. But it is a rezone process, and so there'd be a petition by, typically it's the parties affected That's my understanding of those. Again, we don't deal with them much, so I can't say a lot of specific information about that, but everything's an option.
Just a thought.
Oh, very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Then what I'm going to do here is move from number 1 down to number 3 so that we're staying on the same property. Consider the building permit application for demolition of 705 North Egan Avenue. And Chad, did you have anything more that you wanted to add to that?
You know, in the agenda packet, maybe I'll just say a few things. In the agenda packet, you have the application itself, Form A, Form B, some submittals from the applicant, a case report, and then a letter dated February 11th from SHPO that was previously acknowledged. But then also, it's not in the packet, but on the 25th of March, you acknowledged their SHPO's letter in which they provided a finding. And that, again, that was acknowledged 2 weeks ago, so that was in the public and for everybody to see. But they made the comment, prior to any government action which may encroach upon, damage, or destroy any historic properties on the state, this needs to be provided to them. So they did look at this property and they made a finding that it's a non-contributing resource. And finally, they had indicated that, I'll get there, excuse me. Here it is. They determined that the demolition of this property will not encroach, damage, or destroy the historic district. And they have also, I guess that it's a non-contributing resource, excuse me, and thereby the demolition of the property will not encroach, damage, or destroy the Madison Historic District, which is listed on the Register of Historic Places. So that's all I wanted to know. I just read a couple different excerpts from the letter. So that was their information that SHPO had provided to us.
Other questions or comments?
What are our potential courses of action for this, and what happens if we choose them?
Approve the demolition,
Yeah.
or
What happens if we approve?
if we approve the demolition, then they have to continue forward.
When
to
can
take
they
the
do
building
that?
down.
Let me speak to timing, because it's
Yes.
very important here. If there's a motion to approve the demolition permit, by my rough math, it needs to be effective on March 26th, because we have to give historical preservation 10 days written notice. So I'm going to prepare findings consistent with your motion tonight. You'll adopt those findings next Monday. Then I have to provide those, we have to provide those to historical preservation with 10 days notice with nothing happening. So when I just look at the calendar roughly, I think we're looking at March 26th.
March
Excuse me,
26th or
sorry.
April?
Why am I saying
Okay,
that?
thank you.
April 26th as the
Thank you.
effective, I'm sorry if I said March that whole time. April 26th as the effective date of the permit. Because we've got some findings to draft and adopt and share with historical preservation.
Now, the other half of his question is what if we vote it down?
Well, no, actually, there's 3 paths. We can table it for a week,
Okay.
right?
Can you table
What
it?
happens if we table it?
You can table it.
I mean, they haven't even bothered to talk to the neighbors, and we asked them to, so maybe if we give them another week, they'll,
Did this building permit come out of your office, Chad?
No, the applicant filled out the permit, and then we forwarded on. It's
Okay.
a building permit for demolition. And
Okay.
we forwarded it on to them.
Now, question for David. This is January 23rd, 2019. Is that a little old to be going back and approving?
I don't think so. Based on the number of hearings that have been held, the number of notices provided, I don't think the date of the permit is very relevant here, and certainly not just because it goes back to January, Bob.
Okay, thank you. I was just asking.
I want to follow up a little bit, if I may, Mayor.
Go for it.
You know, a comment Commissioner Corbin made as well is that, you know, we've told this developer multiple times to visit with the neighbors. And I know that they had a big conversation out here at the last meeting, or one of the last meetings in the hallway. To me, a hallway conversation, just because you're both at the same meeting for the same topic, is not actively meeting with your neighbors and discussing things with them, which, in my opinion, if you sat down knowing, I think, all of the neighbors in that area, if you sit down with them and you all work it out, I know that a lot of the discussions, a lot of the questions would have been answered, and in a reasonable manner, and you know, in a professional manner. And so I don't understand with this developer what the big deal is by not engaging with the neighbors. And it just shows or demonstrates that. What are you hiding? And so I have a question, you know, as far as that goes. But, you know, the other part of that is that we need housing in Madison, but we also need good developers in Madison to provide and to be good neighbors and to be good citizens of our community. And I don't know, Commissioner Corbin, if a week is gonna, I mean, what was it that first time? We gave them a month to contact the neighbors, and they didn't do it. So I don't know if a month or a week is gonna help. I wouldn't mind tabling it either if, you know, if we think that would help them to engage with the neighbors, and I don't know if that's going to get us anything or not.
I guess I would be cautious on putting something in front of them as a restriction that we did not have at the beginning, and that we may not even have in our ordinance, and that
Yeah.
would require them to.
Right.
And I guess I'm looking at it from the standpoint, you know, in my mind here, of what the county is going through right now on the drainage issue. They're looking at, you know, the situation of getting rid of it from the standpoint of they don't want to be liable in the middle. So, David, I'm going to ask for your input here. Since there's nothing in our ordinances that I'm aware of there where we have to require a developer to contact the neighbors, what are your thoughts?
Well, you put me in a tough position because legally speaking, Mayor, I think you're correct. I don't think that the developer has a legal duty under our ordinances, nor do I think under statute, to go out and talk to the neighbors. However, this commission retains the discretion to decide what's important to it and vote accordingly. So my legal advice is you can table it. However, if you table it a week and we come back here in a week, and somebody like Judge Tucker shows up and says they still haven't contacted us, they still don't have a legal requirement to do so.
Yep.
So we're in the same spot, I'll say that. I
Be a
feel
bit
like
of a wake-up call. I don't think we slow them down anyway, because they have to wait till April 26th to really do anything anyway.
Well, that just pushes everything back.
Well, no,
It'll
you'd be
push
pushing everything back a week.
you'd probably
Well, we
push
still
everything.
have
back.
the hearing
When we
for-
started this process with them over a year ago, with their first proposal, I specifically asked them to contact the neighbors, and it wasn't done a year ago. So this process hasn't been just started in January. This started a year ago.
And
So I
just
guess I'm
because-
reluctant
just
to say
because
that,
they're-
I'm reluctant to put out a demand, if you want to say, that they contact the neighbors before we would make any decision.
Well, you're asking us to make a decision. We approve it or,
I am, absolutely. Because we've been with this process for how many months? And I would think that by now, you should have some idea of whether or not, this is something that with the information provided to us, information provided from the State Historic Preservation Office, I would think that you would have made it a decision, and tying it to having them sit down and have coffee with the neighbors, I don't know if I feel that that's really a justified reason not to make a decision.
I agree that they probably have fallen short of my hopes that they would be in really solid contact with the neighbors. But it hasn't happened, and we are faced with the dilemma that this says something to us about, or could say something to us about their willingness to work with neighbors in the future, which makes us even more apparent to me than before that we need to protect the rights of the landowners, the historical society, and the people involved here. But I don't think it should affect, at this point, whether they've contacted the neighbors or not, whether we should move forward with the petition on the demolition, yes or no. We should either make that decision, yes or no, and go from there. I wish they would have done this by now. They haven't. So I don't see that they're going to. And I don't think that that should hold up the petition. It does make me concerned, and not just for as someone who lives in the neighborhood, for how they're going to act in the future, which is the bigger part of this right now for us anyway. I also hate to see properties sit idle too long. I know what happens when things sit idle too long. They deteriorate quickly. They're subject to vandalism. So I think we do have some responsibilities here to, because I don't think they're going to reopen those properties for rental. They're going to either tear them down and leave it blank, or they're going to move into this project to work for people. So at this point, I think probably we should vote on this one way or the other, approving it or saying no to it. But I don't think putting it off a week or two is going to get us much. And if you can show me where it will, that everything we're asking is not.
Well, it sends a message.
Yes, it does. And this discussion should send a message too.
I think it sent a message last year when we, shut down the project that they wanted to do last year. And now they've come back, with something that does fit our ordinances. And they've gotten responses, which Chad says he has just received from SHPO. And I don't know that I want to sit and put the city in court trying to decide something.
I think the density issue is the big thing right now. We're faced with the design, density, those kind of things. How's this going to affect parking? With that many more places.
But that is
handle
what- that is what
exactly,
we're doing
exactly,
tonight.
Mayor. That's
Yes.
exactly what I'm
That's not
saying.
what
So
we're
I
doing
think that
tonight.
when we can't get to that
Until next time.
Well, until we move through this first.
Very true.
This is still a step to a larger thing, and I
Couldn't
would
agree
feel a lot
more.
more comfortable if the neighbors had said, hey, we're not going to oppose this. We like what we see what's coming, and they've committed to this. We don't have that. We're missing that part.
That's what's coming is next. And then we will be going through these processes again, and we will have the opportunities then to take a look at what their proposal is, what SHPO's responses are, and, so that'll be a next step of, okay, now you've got a vacant lot. Now, what can you put there? That all has to come before us again.
All right. Can we do a voice vote? I'm going to make a motion to consider building permit application for demolition 705 North Egan Avenue.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Jen, would you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Corbin?
No.
Oh, hang on.
I'm sorry.
Chad?
The motion to consider means approve? Is that
Approve.
correct?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Was there anything else, David, you wanted to add?
There's going to be a second motion that I'm going to request, but let's get through this one.
Okay. Commissioner Corbin, roll call.
No.
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 Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Waldner?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, I would ask that while we're having this hearing, that the commission consider making a motion to direct the city attorney to prepare findings consistent with the approval of the demolition permit and the SHPO recommendation for 705 North Egan. I'm going to ask for the same motion later on 709.
So move.
I would move that.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, number 2, public hearing for the demolition of 709 North Egan Avenue. Is there anyone that would want to address that one? And that's the blue house that's north of the one we just talked about.
I'll be real short.
Please.
I appreciate your comments and consideration. What we're really concerned with is maintaining the historical character of the district, and ask that you be involved, as Commissioner Johnson said, and Commissioner Corbin, Commissioner Waldner. As a neighborhood, we have concerns with what's going in and what's
Exactly.
going to replace. And it would be really nice to have a lot of confidence in what's happening, but with what's gone on before, we have concerns. And so I just want you and would ask that you provide the hearings and the attention to the details on the second phase, and you've all addressed that, and I appreciate that.
And
I know,
that is our intent,
Commissioner
yes.
Sill, Mayor Lindsay, I know that from your comments, that's your concern as well. But the historic district is really important.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on 709? Okay, if not, I will move down to number 4. Consider the building permit application for demolition of 709 North Egan Avenue. And Chad, do you have anything more to add to this?
I will say in the agenda packet, Your Honor, much like the last hearing we had, we have the application itself. We have the application, Form A, Form B, the submittals from the developer, which we refer to as a case report, a letter from SHPO dated February 11, 2019, a list of administrative rules in the state of South Dakota provided by SHPO, some photos of the property, and then a cost estimate provided as well. And then again, I would also like to refer to the letter that was acknowledged on March 25th. It's a March 22nd letter from SHPO where they made those findings that they determined that the demolition of this property will not encroach upon, damage, or destroy the Madison Historic District. And furthermore, I'm excerpting here, of course, before the city takes any actions that may encroach, damage, or destroy the historic property in the National or State Register of Historic Places, that we've consulted and complied with the state statutes related to that. And so they find it's a non-contributing resource, and destroying it will not encroach upon our historic district.
And I might add to that, it also did not qualify as a historic building because it was not built during the time frame. So it was a house that was built after the historic establishment dates. So it was non-conforming from the time it was built. So, other questions or comments?
The only other quick comment that I'll put in on both of these lots is, from the public safety side of it, and Commissioner Johnson made a small mention of it, but it will be nice to have both of these properties down and to a flat property. And, we can look at the building permits and we'll be a little stricter on that, because I am disappointed in the developer not showing up here at his own hearing for 2 properties, but we'll deal with that issue as those other things come before us. But certainly from my perspective, both of these areas and properties have been, it'll be nice to get them cleaned up, I guess.
Other comments? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve building permit application for demolition 709 North Egan Avenue.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Jen, would you do roll call, please, on this one as well?
Commissioner Waldner,
Aye.
Commissioner Thel,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Corbin,
Yes.
and Mayor Lindsay.
Yes. All right.
I'd like the second motion to be to direct the city attorney to prepare findings consistent with the approval of the demolition permit for 709 North Egan.
I'd move that.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. On new business, authorize the mayor to sign change order number 1 with D&G Concrete Construction Incorporated, PCN X04E, Project 2019-1, Highway 34, Washington Avenue, reconstruction. Chad, I'll ask you to address this one.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Included in the agenda packet
Thank you, guys.
is the document, change order pages 1 and 2. Those are the only pages. There's some attached documents as well that are in the agenda packet. Those will go into some of the specific details related to this. But this is a change order that basically does 2 things. There is a steel casing pipe that needs to be bored underneath the railroad for our new water main and sewer main as part of this project. We anticipated, based upon railroad policies, that the casement pipe for the water main would be 16 inches and in diameter, and the casement pipe for the sewer main would be 20 inches in diameter. The contractor would like to install a larger casing pipe to allow them to have several different opportunities to remove obstructions perhaps, and so on. And there would be no cost increase for the larger pipe. And so the contractor has proposed that. We've submitted that proposal to the railroad BNSF. We're waiting to hear back from them, so that could be approved. We don't seem to have any concerns with it. And initial discussions with railroad engineers, they've indicated they don't, but we want to wait till we actually have the official approval before we issue this. And then the second item is the utility trench compaction testing. That was bid into this project. However, we do have a contract in place right now with South Dakota DOT that says the DOT will actually do that testing. And so we are taking that requirement out of our contract. We're taking out the requirement that our contractor hires a subcontractor to do that testing. And we're going to just rely on the DOT to do the work. As is the case per that predated agreement we have with the DOT. So that's a credit of $12,582. That's the only monetary change with this change order. There's no change in contract times in any way. The contractor signed it. The only other thing I would ask is that, and, Attorney Jenks can clarify if it's necessary or not, but I'm thinking it would be appropriate to issue your approval contingent upon the railroad approval, and then I'll just hold this change order until I receive that paperwork and thereby also hold transmitting it to the contractor as well. So that I think it's appropriate to have that contingency.
I agree.
So with other than that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Well, and then just FYI, and that people are going to say, well, how deep are those? And when you and I talked, you're approximately 9 feet deep.
Correct.
Below the railroad track. So it's not something that's going to be, right under the tracks. It's going to be down,
Yes.
a significant distance underneath.
As you all know from driving over, there's a hump there where the railroad is, and these are particularly the sanitary sewer that's on grade, so that has to
flow downhill.
from north to south, and those grades are locked but for all extensive purposes, because of the abrupt change in grade to get to the elevation of the railroad crossing, the water main is more or less straight from 2nd Street north to 3rd Street north as well. So, but indeed, it's about 9 feet.
Questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion contingent upon?
I'll make a motion, we authorize the mayor to sign change order number 1 for D&G Concrete Construction Incorporated for the Highway 34 Washington Avenue reconstruction on the contingency that the railroad also goes along with it.
Second?
Hey, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, approve the volunteers for the Lake County Electronic Recycling Drop-Off Event. Kelly, is this something you want to address, or Chad? Or Jen?
Where they're insured and bonded without trouble.
We do this for work comp purposes. When they work this recycling event for us, you have a list here as provided by the Public Works Department. These gentlemen are part of the Madison Bulldogs High School baseball team.
Pretty rough crew.
Looked like it. I'll make a motion to approve volunteers for Lake County Electronic Recycling Drop-Off Event.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 3, declare as surplus property and appoint appraisers for Armor Express Razor Level 2 vest, 2 7-inch by 12-inch shot plates. Justin, would you want to address this?
Good evening.
Yes.
As all of you may not know, Officer Tony Garcia has resigned his position with our department. He is moving on to become the canine officer for the Flandreau Police Department. So with that, all of our protective vests that are issued to our officers are cut and measured specifically to that individual officer. We have been contacted by the Flandreau Police Department. They are asking to purchase that vest so it can follow Officer Garcia to their department. Typically what happens in this situation, we would reissue that vest to a new officer on a temporary basis until his vest is measured to him, and turnaround time on those is anywhere from 2 to 3 months. We have an opportunity to get some of our initial investment back on this vest. It does have some shelf life left. I think it's a good opportunity to get a little bit of a return on our investment. So that's what the purpose of this is. This surplus is it will be purchased by the Flandreau Police Department.
Okay. Other questions or comments?
Are we restricted in any way by who can buy it?
Not a vest.
No.
Duty weapon.
You can
Yes.
Yes. No, it's not something that we would offer out to the general public. Our older vests, we do typically will take out to the range and show new officers what they can expect for performances from those vests after they've reached their shelf life.
Thank you.
Say I had one of these vests, how much could my weight fluctuate before I had to get a different one?
How much would your weight fluctuate if what?
How much can my weight fluctuate before I'd have to order a different vest?
If
Are
it's
you
sized
going-
just
Oh,
right.
yeah.
They have a shelf life of 5 years, or an expected life expectancy of 5 years due to breakdown with sweat and everything. So if you're issued that vest, you're more than likely going to wear it for the 5 years.
You'd be surprised how much weight I can gain in 5 years.
I would request that you work that off with your dismental foot resolve.
Well, with that, I'll make a motion to declare surplus property and appoint appraisers. I believe we're going with Commissioner Waldner, Chief Meyer, and Engineer Comus.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay,
Thank you.
Tim was already here. He's the only one, and I think we already answered his comments. So, all right. With that, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So make a motion, we'll go.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Call me later. And then David?